almost midnight here on the west coast of the United States of America. And this is the first of 5 monthly talks now through November. I'm recording it for Facebook, but I'll also post it on my YouTube channel, Spoken Words of Power, and then I'll embed it in a post on my blog, wordsofpower.earth. And there on Words of Power, all one word, .earth, you'll find it with a PowerPoint presentation with accompanying images and bullet text. And all the images accompanying this talk are images of women in the Ukraine or involved in the war to repel the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. It's Ukrainian women soldiers, Ukrainian women journalists, Ukrainian civilians, women civilians killed in Russian attacks, and also women leaders of NATO allies, and also women leaders of the Belarusian and Russian resistance. The reason all the accompanying images relate to the Ukraine is because that struggle is integral to our own. For them to win, we must win. For us to win, they must win. And as all women, because the ascendancy of the feminine is the principal engine, the principal driving force of the great shift that is already underway. And we'll touch on that in different ways throughout the length of this talk, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork with those two to underscore the importance of those two truths. So, secret engine of the world. Secret engine of the world further notes on Gaian politics, primal reality, and the arc of human evolution, in my most recent book. It's framed around 3 deadlines. The November 2022, which is the U.S. midterm elections, federal elections. November 2024, which is the next U.S. presidential election. And 10 years from the date of publication. It was published last year, 2021, so 2031, 10 years from, 9 years now, which is the planetary deadline that I give for making significant radical change sufficient to mitigate the worst impacts of what we have already begun to experience in terms of the climate emergency. So, in other words, to save us really from climate apocalypse, maybe 10 years, 9 years now, give or take, but you get the idea. I started talking about climate change I would say, I used to say 30 years. And I said 20 years. I'm saying 10 years. So that's the frame. And these deadlines, they're not literary devices or rhetorical flourish. They are very real. They are existential. They are doom-defining and doom-defying. And I'm going to honor them and dedicate this decade of my life from 2021 to 2031 to these deadlines published in Secret Engine. And beyond that, none of us, beyond that, we cannot see. Not even me, and or people like me. And it is foolish and bad juju to speculate, really, beyond these three deadlines. And as we patch each one, we will adapt and adjust, and I will address them accordingly. But right now, right here, the substance of this talk is going to be about the 2020, the November 2022 deadline. So, there are, before I go deeper, I need to get into something about who is gathered in this virtual room as I give this talk. Some among you resonate deeply with my political and geopolitical views. Some among you agree with me on some issues and disagree with me on others. But you're engaged. And we're all leaning forward, left, liberal, centrist, and true conservative, in a united front, what I call a united front for sanity and decency, which transcends all our differences over any particular issue or set of issues. But I also have to identify a few other categories among us. Well, there are our friends in the toxic left, what I call the toxic left or the naive left, which is not all of the left, but a significant subset of the left. And by toxic left or naive left, I mean those who choose their imagined ideological purity over compromise and incremental progress. Those who would rather feel self-righteous than win a victory for the greater good. Those who say they're tired of being forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. If you think this, you have no real knowledge of evil. You have never faced it directly in this life. If you had real knowledge of evil, if you had faced it directly in this life, you would not hesitate for an instant. If there were a choice between the lesser of two evils, you'd pick the lesser of two evils. And it's a false frame anyway, because the Democratic Party is not evil. It's wrong sometimes. It's compromised. You couldn't be a major party in the United States of America if you weren't compromised to a great extent because of the nature of how campaigns, the insane nature of how campaigns are funded here. But it's not evil. So it's not even a choice between the lesser of two evils. And then there's what I call the woo-woo contingent, the woo-woo tribe. There are those among us who imagine themselves to be beyond politics. Those who think it isn't spiritual to choose sides. Those who have tuned out completely. Those who imagine they are at work architecting civilization 2.0 in a bubble of white privilege from some eco-tourist retreat in Costa Rica, most likely. And then there are the pseudo-cynical among us, those who hide behind cynicism, those who just critique, those who reflectively say, oh, well, that will never happen, or nothing is going to change. Always deflating, always dismissing. Those who acknowledge the worthiness of our goals, but are unwilling to expend their own intellectual or emotional capital in the struggle to achieve those goals. I say pseudo-cynical because cynicism, as expounded among the pre-Platonic Greeks, by Diogenes, for example, they would be with us. They would be standing Diogenes would be standing shoulder to shoulder with us on the barricades. The cynicism was itself a great and holy philosophy. In fact, I'm quite confident almost all of the pre-Platonic philosophers would be with us, shoulder to shoulder at the barricades. Then there are what I call the doom-infatuated. This is a fascinating little cluster. Those who, by cluster I don't mean they're all together, I mean just, I've noticed among us, the doom-infatuated, those who refuse to even entertain the possibility of victory. It is as if they are eager for the onset of dystopia and doom. The doom-infatuated are like those who are drawn to a cliff overlooking a yawning chasm. They are entranced, and they feel its pull, and they really want to let go and fall in. So the doom-infatuated, the pseudo-cynical, the woo-woo tribe, and the toxic and or naive left. So I ask you, is the glass, people will say, is the glass half full or half empty? As if this tells us something about us. Are you a half full, are you a glass half full person or a glass half empty person? It's a false frame. Like the choice between the lesser of two evils. It's a false frame and a flawed question. And it says much, and the answer says much less than it purports to. The truth is that the half-empty glass and the half-full glass are the same glass. They occupy the same space. The glass is both half full and half empty simultaneously. This is for real. This is a time to choose sides. Politics is holy. Ugly, yes, but holy. Your vote is a sacrament. To not vote or throw away your vote on a third-party candidate is a sacrilege. The fate of all hangs in the balance. So, the facts on the ground as they are tonight in late July 2022. Guns and abortion. for many years it's been building, building, building. But in the last few weeks, uh, it's been overflowing in the collective psyche of the United States. Guns and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now, these two things, the right to bear arms, a total distortion of the Second Amendment, and a woman's right to choose, as formally enshrined in the Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade, they were originally meant. These were tricks ginned up by the Republicans to serve as red meat for their base in the states of the Neo-Confederacy, and among certain religious and ethnic groupings. A lot of money was poured into it. A lot of indoctrination was poured into it. Served the purposes of the NRA and the fundamentalist Christian churches. But it was meant really just to get their people to the polls. But they created a monster, and it took on a life of its own. And now these two causes, the right to bear arms and the banning of abortions and the denying of a woman's reproductive rights, they're now apertures, punctured. These are punctures in the membrane of the collective psyche, and through them are pouring misogyny, racism. These are apertures opening up into bardo realms of fear and hate, and pouring through misogyny, racism, patriarchy, and all being manipulated to serve the ends of patriarchy, to serve the ends of oligarchy. Patriarchy and oligarchy, they're practically synonyms. So evil, it's not a moral concept to me. It's not a religious concept to me. It is a diagnosis, a mystical diagnosis, if you will. And evil is a disease of the soul, of the psyche, of the soul, and it is communicable. So that disease has spread among tens of millions of people. And that hand has been played by the oligarch and the patriarch. They've overplayed that hand. And it's also here because power is really slipping away from the oligarchs and patriarchs. We'll get to that, but it's really slipping away from them. So this inundation of mass murders by incels and angry young Trumpster men, this is really and the stripping away of a woman's right, and the fear of can I travel to another state to get my abortion without being arrested or intercepted on the way or interrogated by the state police. What madness. Handmaid's Tale. It's psyops to break our hearts and wills. Psyops to break our hearts and wills. And behind it all is this growing, somebody like McConnell, like what does he live for? What does he stand for? What is he doing? There are nihilists. There are nihilists. So guns and abortion. And the Ukraine, I've mentioned the war in the Ukraine. I hesitate. It's a genocidal aggression against the sovereign government of the Ukraine. I hate to say by Russia, I want to just say by Putin's kleptocracy, which has seized control of the Russian government. I'm going to just read you this quote from a very brave woman, Ukrainian journalist. You'll find all these links, and all the source of all this material you'll find in the script when I post it on my blog. This is just the quote. It is a war for the future of the world, for its ability to unite. It is a war of decolonization, because Ukraine is fighting for the right to exist. But for me as a journalist, it is also a war of truth and lies. And then here, domestically, we are dealing with the big lie. The big lie is the insistence that Trump, the 2020 election was stolen from Trump. And the events of January 6th, 2020, January 6th, 2021, and now beyond, because it's not over. That was really the beginning of this, of what flows from the great lie and from the sedition of 1/6. I'll just read you this quote from MSNBC's Nicole Wallace. Perpetuating the big lie is an attack on the core of our constitutional republic. Trump is the spark, but the Republicans are the oxygen. There is no slide to autocracy without Republicans. And then the fourth of these kind of fundamental issues, the facts on the ground, are the planetary emergencies that we're confronted with: the climate collapse, climate emergency, the climate collapse, and the current pandemic and the next pandemic, because the rise of pandemics is also part of the climate crisis, part of the ecological collapse, part of the sixth great extinction. It's all interpenetrating. And we're dealing with all of that. Facts on the ground. So it's imperative within that context of the facts on the ground, as I've alluded to them, outlined them briefly. It is imperative that you embrace this truth and these facts. We are not divided. The American people are not divided. Well, we're not divided down the middle. That's not why we can't deliver powerful, sweeping, progressive change. Sure, we're divided, but it's not 50-50. On some of the most pressing issues, it's more like 70-30, and we're the 70%. There are more of us than them. I said this to you before, but I'm going to underscore it tonight. There are more of us than them. Yes, us and them. Choosing sides. There are more of us than them. That's what Lando tells Poe in the most recent Star Wars trilogy, at a moment that seems like it's the end. And it turns out to be the beginning. Consistently, in most credible polls, 70-80% of us of the American people want abortion safe, legal, accessible for anyone who needs one. Likewise, 70 to 80% or more of, depending on the poll, of us all Americans want universal background checks for potential gun owners. And almost as many, at least 55 to 65%, want a nationwide ban on assault weapons, just like we had very effectively, and just like all of our allies have, along with universal health care, by the way. I'll read you this quote from Steve Kerr, head coach of the Golden State Warriors, after one of the recent massacres. 50 senators in Washington are going to hold us hostage. Do you realize that 90% of Americans, regardless of political party, want background checks, universal background checks? 90% of us. We are being held hostage by 50 senators in Washington who refuse to even put it to a vote, despite what we, the American people, want. Two-thirds of the American people say the government should do more on climate change. 72% of the American people, in more than one poll, want CO2 regulated. 60% or more want fossil fuel companies to pay a carbon tax. These are facts. This is the truth. We are actually united in a robust majority on numerous urgent issues. It is imperative that you embrace this truth and these facts here and now, in this perilous moment. There are more of us than them. Well, if that's the truth, why is this happening? Constitutional impediments are foundational to why we're stalled as a society and seemingly sliding backwards. The Senate itself is a constitutional impediment. There are 100 senators, 2 for each of the 50 states, but a state with a few 100,000 people in it, or a few million people in it, have the same amount of votes in the Senate as a state that has the economy and the population of a major European country. So that's insane. It's insane unless you want to control, unless you want minority rule built in. You want the rule, unless you want to protect the power of oligarchy and patriarchy. And that is, in one sense, the founders wanted to not let things get out of hand, but in another way, they wanted to make sure not let things get out of hand to them, not let it get too far away from the oligarchs. There are, and so the Senate is part of the problem. The construction of the Senate itself is part of the problem. Of course, if we give it DC statehood and Puerto Rico statehood, if they want to join us, that would be 4 more Senate seats that would sway a significantly toward the progressive side on many major issues. The Electoral College, of course, is constitutionally structured impediment because it's predicated on this not the popular vote. You can win the popular vote and not when the Electoral College, George W. Bush was elected the first time without the popular vote, and Trump was elected without the popular vote in 2016. And yet they still, because of the Electoral College, they still took office. That's, at this point in history, if you're moving deeper and deeper into the truth of democracy and the truth of a republic, that too is insane. A little more difficult to deal with the Electoral College because you'd require a constitutional amendment, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. And then the third structural impediment, to some degree, written into the Constitution is the Supreme Court. Although the Supreme Court has evolved, the power that it has now, it did not inherently have structurally in the Constitution. It's kind of grown over the years. But, these structural limitations, as frustrating as they are and as kind of ruthless as they are and kind of oppressive as they are not, they proved insufficient. They proved insufficient because America kept progressing. After World War II, America kept progressing. Through FDR, through Truman, through sane Republican president like Eisenhower, through Kennedy, through Johnson, even through Nixon in some ways, and on, it kept progressing. And so they had to come up with new means to thwart majority rule in the United States. So you see the media consolidation and the impact of media consolidation. Most of the news media in the country, controlled by literally a handful of major corporations. You see the rise of a right-wing echo chamber from Limbaugh and hate jock radio, right-wing hate talk radio, into Fox News and into everything that's gone beyond Fox News, and in terms of building this right-wing echo chamber, their own separate reality, way to indoctrinate people. Gerrymandering became the wild gerrymandering too, so that carving up states, carving up congressional districts in ways that could yield less black power and more white power. And then, but those things weren't enough. And so we had Citizens United and dark money and these insane Supreme Court rulings that said corporations corporations have rights. The corporations have the right of a person, and you can give as much money as you want. And corporations are not people. Money is not speech. But we're operating right now on the obscene, insane notion that corporations are people and money is speech. And then vote suppression. Vote suppression. You're registered to vote. You go to vote. You find out you're not registered because they've arbitrarily purged hundreds of thousands of people in the months prior to an election. Or you do go to vote and you're waiting online for half a day, 5 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours in the pouring rain to vote because they've made sure that there's only one polling place in densely populated areas of people of color. And then, voter suppression and vote suppression gets more and more intense, so that, okay, now you're waiting. Now you've made sure that you haven't been kicked off the voter rolls, and you're waiting in line you've taken the day off work, because we don't have a national holiday for elections, and you're standing there for hours waiting for your chance to vote. And now they're passing laws that say nobody can come and bring you water. Nobody can come and bring you food uh, to make your to keep you hydrated and to keep you healthy while you're online waiting for your right to vote. Vote suppression, voter suppression. The perversion of the filibuster. The filibuster, of course, is an old racist tool, but it's actually worked sometimes for progressive causes. But the as the country marched on into the progressive future, they 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 perverted the filibuster so that now you don't have to stand there and hold the floor. You could just show up and say something, and the filibuster goes on. Nobody has to hold the space, and you need uh, an insane amount. It used to be a few people, or one person, or two people, or five people, or whatever, and you could overrule the filibuster. But now you need like 10 people. You need 60 votes to override a filibuster. It's insane. So why does it still exist? Because the dark money and the Citizens United trough is overflowing, and they make sure they have enough senators on both sides of the aisle to keep the filibuster alive and pretend it's some great tradition. It's just a rule that can be changed at the beginning of every session, and it will be changed. It will be changed if we survive, if we win this deadline, this upcoming deadline. So all of these things, they still weren't enough. It still wasn't enough. So they had to bring in the global gangsters. They had to have Putin tip the scales on an election in multiple ways and install a madman, Trump, a weaponized clown in the White House, supplementing the American oligarchs, the Kochs, the Mercers, etc., with Russian oligarchs. And even that wasn't enough. They got 4 years, and we overcame that in 2020. And so now they are extrapolating from the big lie, and they are organizing to try to say the Constitution says that state legislatures can decide who the electors are to send to the Electoral College from that state. So if they don't like the results of an election, they can just put in their own slate of electors and send them to the Electoral College. This is what Trump wanted to do on 1/6. They're trying to institutionalize this, trying to codify this in red states. All of this was done not because not because the country is split down the middle. All of this is done is because they are losing. There are less of them, and their base is shrinking. The base that the oligarchs and the patriarchs used to control the majority by minority rule, that base is shrinking. And so they're getting more and more desperate in their efforts, in their methods. So we talked about the people, the toxic left, and the pseudo-cynical, and the woo-woo tribe, and those entranced by doom, who almost want it all to fall apart. Bottom line is, there is a profound difference. There is a profound difference between governance by the Democratic Party, as currently constituted, and governance by the Republican Party. as currently constituted, which is at this point basically a zombie death cult. Let me just give you some context. Clinton Gore, 1992 to 2000. Just some highlights. Lesser of two evils. An assault weapons ban was passed in 1994. Quote from Joe Biden: "When we passed the assault weapons ban, mass shootings went down. When the law expired, mass shootings tripled." It's a fact. Clinton Gore appointed Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer to the Supreme Court. Clinton Gore converted the largest deficit budget in American history into the largest surplus. Clinton Gore protected millions of acres of American land. Clinton Gore delivered internet to 95% of U.S. schools. Clinton Gore signed on to the Kyoto Accords on climate change. Obama-Biden 2009-2017. Just some highlights, lesser of two evils. $787 billion American Recovery and Reinvestment Act to spur economic growth during the Great Recession. The Affordable Care Act, which, by the way, first thing Clinton Gore, when they came in, the first thing they tried to do was deliver universal health care in the United States. And they were almost destroyed in the effort. Hillary Clinton was tasked to drive it, and the resistance among the Senate tightly controlled by the oligarchs, and the campaign financing world tightly controlled by the oligarchs, stopped it in its tracks. And then Obama came in and adopted actually a moderate Republican plan, which had and they put in it a public option. So basically, universal health care was a public option. Of course, they couldn't pass it without removing the public option. So they, instead of getting health care for everybody, they got health care for tens of millions of people that wouldn't have had it. And if the Republican governors of some of the states had bought into Obamacare and used it and opened it up and promoted it, the pressure Obamacare would have pushed us further and faster towards universal health care. So anyway, Obama passed the Affordable Care Act. Tens of millions of people that didn't have health care were able to get it because of Obamacare. It could have been much more. It could have been everybody. They negotiated a nuclear deal with an agreement with Iran, which avoided a war with Iran, which the neocons desperately wanted. Which was one that if Obama-Biden did nothing else to avoid a war with Iran after the madness of the military adventures in Iraq and Afghanistan, that would have been reason enough for a Nobel Peace Prize. They didn't win that. They appointed Sotomayor and Kagan, two powerful, brilliant women to the Supreme Court. They expanded embryonic stem cell research, leading to groundbreaking work in areas including spinal injury treatment and cancer. Embryonic stem cell research leading to groundbreaking work in areas including spinal injury treatment and cancer. We had just spent 8 years before that with a Republican administration that was fighting stem cell research, banning stem cell research, limiting stem cell research. Insanity. Obama-Biden was responsible for the successful commando raid that killed Osama bin Laden, the man personally responsible for the slaughter of the innocents on 9/11. That was a very happy day for me when he was consigned to Davy Jones's locker. I write about all of that in Dragon. Oh, and Obama-Biden signed the Paris Accords for climate change. Clint Gore put us into Kyoto. Bush took us out of Kyoto. Obama-Biden put us into Paris. Trump put us out of Paris. There's a profound difference in the governance philosophies between Democrats and Republicans. And it's literally the difference between a philosophy of altruism and a philosophy of sociopathy. The difference between a philosophy of altruism in governance and a philosophy of sociopathy as a form of governance, as a philosophy of governance. Altruism as a philosophy of governance, sociopathy as a philosophy of governance. If you are either what I call toxic left or naive left, and you consider your imagined ideological party superior to your ideological purity superior to compromise with liberals or centrists, I ask you this simple question. If you have 10 issues, 10 burning issues that you care deeply about, and you could get 6 of them or 7 of them or even 5 of them or 8 of them realized, or even realized 60 or 75% of each one of them realized, would you rather say no because you couldn't get all 10? That's why I say toxic left. That's insane. And this, and when you look at the accomplishments of Obama and you look at the accomplishments of Clinton, and that's what we're talking about, where if you have 10 great issues and you only got 4 or 5 addressed or 6 addressed, well, first of all, at least you didn't go backwards. And second of all, you got 5 or 6 addressed. And you keep lurching forward. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Okay, it's still 1 step forward. Now we're at a different moment. So in 2016, for example, there were enough toxic left and naive left votes in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, who either voted for Jill Stein at Putin's dinner date. She sat in Moscow with Flynn and Putin at dinner in the months before in the year before the 2016 election. Oh, just a coincidence, of course. There were enough people who either voted for Jill Stein or didn't vote at all because Hillary Clinton was just so, I had a member of the woo-woo tribe tell me that Clinton was worse than Trump. Okay. So, and Trump brought us 3 abominable SCOTUS appointments. The toxic left and the naive left used to, oh, I'm tired of hearing about the Supreme Court. Oh, really? Well, this is what we meant. And these 3 toxic appointments, and no, it's not Ruth Bader Ginsburg's fault because she died on the job. We wouldn't have gotten to fill that seat. But they brought us the end of Roe and so much more woe. So now it's 2022. We're over a year into Biden-Harris. And this is we've been denied our FDR moment, and we're praying for indictments. Listen to this. FDR had 58 Democratic votes in the Senate. There were only 96 senators at the time. Truman had 57 votes, Democratic votes in the Senate. There were only 96 senators at the time. Kennedy had 64 senators, Democratic senators. LBJ had 66 votes in the Senate. Carter had 61 votes in the Senate. Clinton had 57 votes in the Senate. Obama had 58 votes in the Senate when they took office. This is when they took office. Biden had 50 votes in the Senate when he took office. Every Democratic president for the last 100 years got at least 57 Democratic senators to start with, except for Biden, who got 50. Barely got those 50 because, God bless them, Ossoff and Warnock in Georgia. Nevertheless, Biden has gotten a lot done. You wouldn't know it by listening to the news media, but it's all documented. Go to @what46 has done. You'd be surprised at what 46 has done, but let me just run through a couple of things quickly. The American Rescue Plan. Do you remember where we were in January 2021? Janet Yellen said the child tax credit and the American Rescue Plan reduced food insecurity for families by 24%. She called it a profound economic and moral victory. Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief package will give the poorest 20% of Americans a 20% boost in income. That all happened for the length of the time of the act. Vaccine doses given 599 million doses. Fully vaccinated 223 million, 67.6% of the population, which is why, in spite of the fact that the pandemic rages on, variant after variant, the number of deaths is way down. And we're dealing with it at a different level. And it would have been, the reality is it would have been over. It could have been over by now if I'll get to that in a moment, if the pandemic hadn't been weaponized by red state governors after 2021, in 2021 after the change in administrations. Let me read you this quote from those high days of progress in the early months of 2021, the first half of 2021, really, from Joan Walsh, writing in The Nation. This is a new Democratic governing coalition moving forward with a strong left wing that knows when to choose its battle. That's still true. Behind a president who survived the era when government was a dirty word. That's true. And now gets to live up to the ideals. What's most important about the Biden plan is not its size, but the thinking behind it. For one thing, it rejected old notions about government support as morally hazardous, handouts to the undeserving that would discourage work. That's Joan Walsh in The Nation in March 2021. That was where we were. In Biden's cabinet Analysis of all cabinet members from the past 4 administrations found that Biden's cabinet has the highest percentage of women heading cabinet-level departments, as well as secretaries, administrators, and directors of color compared to his predecessors overall. Close to half of his current cabinet are women. Half of his current cabinet self-identify as Black, Latino, Asian American, Native American, or multiracial. And perhaps the most important of all those, the most meaningful of all those, the most impactful of all those, was Biden naming Deb Haaland Secretary of the Interior, a historic move, the first indigenous American appointed to the position of a cabinet secretary in the United States. In the judiciary, the most demographically diverse set of judicial candidates in history, including the first LGBTQ woman to serve on a Court of Appeals, the first Muslim to serve as a federal judge, the first Black woman to ever serve on the Supreme Court. 26% of all the Black women currently serving as active judges were nominated by Biden. Nearly 30% of Biden's nominees have served as public defenders. Yeah, lesser two. Biden revoked the Keystone XL permit. Keystone XL pipeline permit. On the campaign trail, Biden vowed to cancel the Keystone XL cross-border permit should he win the election on the first day in office. He made good on that promise. The nail in the coffin. Keystone is over. He rejoined the Paris Accords, also one of his first acts in the Oval Office. He signed an executive order to put us back into the Paris Climate Agreement. Oh yeah, and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, just $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. And yet, as the pundits will tell you breathlessly, Biden's poll numbers have plunged and his agenda is stalled. It's vital that you understand how and why. No, not inflation, not his age, not that he went too far left, not that he didn't go far left enough, not critical race theory, not supply chain issues, not gas prices, not baby formula, none of it. None of it. 4 factors started the downward spiral in Biden's poll numbers. 4 factors. Manchin, senator from West Virginia, Democrat. Kristen Sinema, senator from Arizona, Democrat, killed the Build Back Better bill and the voting rights bill. And Sinema herself killed the minimum wage. $15 minimum wage was going to pass. Sinema torpedoed it. Build Back Better. Get into that in a minute. That's the first factor. Second factor is Beltwayistan media, the corporatist media could not wait to get back to normalized political discourse which it treats as a horse race. Nothing about nothing about all style, no substance. The third factor is the weaponization. So instead of recognizing that we're still dealing with one of the 2 major parties has become literally a zombie death cult. They're treating it, then Trump's gone, it's the Republicans and Democrats. We're going to go back to acting like it's the Republicans and the Democrats and go back to the old playbook. The old playbook is gone. It's gone. And real Republicans, true conservatives, they've all left and joined with us in this united front for sanity and decency. And the weaponization of the pandemic in several ways by the red state governors, ginning up the anti-vax disinformation, ginning up resistance to the wearing of masks, rabble-rousing kind of delusional demonization of Tony Fauci, a scientist, an 80-year-old scientist. And the understandable, the fourth one, most very important, the understandable, depressing assumption that Trump and his co-conspirators will get away with everything. And Trump told, according to the Washington Post, over 30,000 lies in office. According to a crew, he committed 30 crimes, over 30 crimes, federal crimes in office. And the greatest of it all, of course, is the sedition, the attempted coup around January 6th. And there's a lot of impatience, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of hysteria that the Garland Justice Department is not going to act. They've convicted a lot of the people who were on the ground trying to hunt down and kill the Speaker of the House and the Vice President of the United States and the President of the Senate. But in other words, the chain of the line of succession, and seize and destroy the electoral college certifications, which were kept in a leather bag. But they've done a lot of prosecutions, many hundreds of prosecutions of people who did violence that day and broke the law that day. But the ringleaders, Trump and the others, the ringleaders have yet to be indicted. I believe accountability, justice is coming for those who organized, conspired, conceived everything that happened around the big lie, around January 6th and everything leading up to January 6th. I believe there will be accountability for them. I believe indictments are coming, but people don't believe, and so there's a natural sense of that you're going to get away with all this. Those are the factors that have driven Biden's poll numbers down. What was in, by the way, the Build Back Better bill, that those two Democratic senators, beholden to dark money and beholden to all that Citizens United ruling made possible. I like this tweet from Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. What's in the Build Back Better Act? Universal preschool, free community college, lower prescription drug costs, nutrition assistance for kids, investment in green jobs. We're going to pay for it by ensuring the uber wealthy and corporations finally pay their fair share taxes. This is real. You had 48 Democratic senators. And then Harris would have been the tiebreaker to make it 51. Vice President is the tiebreaker. But Manchin and Sinema wouldn't go along with the reconciliation bill, and they kept negotiating it down, negotiating in bad faith, clearly. What else was in there? The most transformative investment in child care, children and caregiving in generations. That's what Ilhan was talking about. Largest effort to combat climate change in American history was in the Build Back Better Act. Biggest expansion of affordable health care in a decade. Most significant effort to bring down costs and strengthen the middle class in generations. Fully paid for. So all that was set to be passed in a reconciliation bill, thus escaping the perversion of the filibuster. But Manchin and Sinema are sellouts. There we are. Now, we can't completely. They made those judges possible. They made those cabinet appointments possible. They are the reason that the Democrats hold the gavel in the Senate, and McConnell is in control of the Senate. The zombie cult is in control of the Senate. So it's not all bad, but this was Biden's agenda. This was the FDR moment, and he was going to seize it. And we were denied. That's where we are. So, here we are, 2022, the midterms. We have to hold the House of Representatives, which Usually whoever's in the White House, the party that's in the White House usually, whoever's in control of the House usually loses a lot of seats in the midterms. That can't happen. That can't happen in this moment. And after the after the repeal of Roe v. Wade, after the reality check that is, after everything after the hell that opens up in terms of all kinds of other rights that we've become, uh, uh, that we're proud of and have embraced in this country, uh, gay marriage and trans rights and many other things that we've come to, this makes us who we are. They're all in jeopardy now. But most importantly, women are not in control of their own bodies. And this has to be reversed. And with 2 or 3 more Democratic senators, this can happen, but we have to hold the House. And the numbers are looking very good. They've changed a lot in the past few months. Me Too fueled the victories in 2018 midterms. Black Lives Matter fueled the victory in 2020 over Trump and gave us the edge in those 2 contests. And bans off our bodies, the response to the repeal of Roe, the shocking, the disgusting Alito court decision. It can be what Me Too was to 2018 and Black Lives Matters was to 2020 in terms of getting people out to vote. Bans off our body can be in 2022. The polls are encouraging. And it's madness that GQP, used to be the GOP, now it's the GQP, is devouring itself with infighting. Voters are turned off by the GQP's toxic extremist agenda. The democratic shift, the evolutionary arc continue to align. America is younger. America is more diverse. America is more comfortable with gender being not the strict binary that it once, strict patriarchally defined binary that it once was. America is changing. And the demographic shift in America is aligned with the evolutionary arc of the human race in this moment over these past years. That's why they are fighting so hard. This is their last stand. There are more of us than them. At a recent Commonwealth Club event promoting his new book, they want to kill Americans, the malicious terrorists, and deranged ideology of the Trump insurgency. The great Malcolm Nance, great follow at Malcolm Nance on Twitter. We need 20% more voters to turn out than in 2018. That's the truth. That's it. That is the truth of it. And in that 2018 midterm election 2 years ago, 2 years into the Trump's single term, we took the House of Representatives, but the zombie death cult still held on to the Senate. And we fought to a tie in the Senate in 20. We fought to a tie in the Senate in 2020, but we need more votes because of those 2 compromised senators. So here we are. Is it the end of everything or the beginning of a new and better America? I used to, if you've read my posts or listened to my talks over these last few years, or we've shared tea or went for a walk, We know that in spite of all that has befallen us, I've said over and over again, I'm wildly optimistic about our future. People would ask me how we're doing, and I would say we're doing very well, therefore we're all in great danger. This, where we are now, is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about. Now, there has been so much pain. We are also traumatized by everything that's happened, the massacres in Buffalo and in Texas and Park Hill, the, uh, the repeal of Roe v. Wade, and the horrors that flow from that, and the abomination, the treason of 1/6. All of this, we've been so traumatized. I feel I can't say wildly optimistic. I don't think it would be proper. It'd be inappropriate to say wildly optimistic. My analysis has not changed, but I'm not going to use the term. I'm not going to use the phrase wildly optimistic. I'm going to tell you that I am grimly confident. I am grimly confident. The half full glass and the half empty glass are the same glass. They occupy the same space. I am grimly confident, but it is up to you. It is up to us. So that's where I will leave it. Go to wordsofpower.earth to get all of my notes and links to the what I've been talking about, and the text of what I've been talking about, and the accompanying images. I want you to see them and honor them. And I will also post this video. I'll post this book on Facebook. I'll also post it on my YouTube channel, Spoken Words of Power. And I will return in August, and I will give another talk, and I will give another talk in September, and I will give another talk in October, and I will give a final talk in November. Om Ahum Benzagur Pemasidi Hum. Om Ahum Benzagur Pemasidi Hum. Om Ahum Benzagur Pemasidi Hum. May the Vajra of the heart be realized in this lifetime. Shaboom.